vehicles aren't the ones out there causing the crime. It's the people driving the vehicles. And so that's why people linking is so important, or, group linking. And I think, if I look back at my career in retail and asset protection, right now, like over the last 10 years, you spend hours, days, weeks, months, sometimes even more than a year trying to build a case. If you're an ORC investigator or you're on the APLP team, you're sifting through incident reports from stores, from your field teams, and you're trying to find these little breadcrumbs, right? Of, is this the same individual in this event, in that event? And trying to build these cases. And you spend a ton of time focused on building the case. You're listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by Aura, where we share actionable insights to help you reduce crime and violence in your stores.
Now we're going to go ahead and introduce today's speakers. First up, we have Bobby Haskins, VP of Retail Partnerships with Aura. Great to have you speaking today, Bobby.
Hey, Julie. Thanks for having me.
And next up, someone I've known for several years, James Stark, Segment Development Manager for Retail with Axis Communications. Good afternoon, James. Great to have you join us.
Hi, Julie. Thanks a lot. Great to be here with you and Bobby.
All right. Today's session is really kind of a panel and just strategy session that we're going back and forth and asking some questions and talking through that. So today we're going to be discussing all things license plate recognition in the U.S. Our topics today are including how to integrate LPR into your existing safety strategy. We're going to be going over some technology considerations and possible misconceptions about its use by retailers. But before we kind of dive into LPR and LP strategy, what are you two hearing from your retail partners and friends? Like, what's an overall state of the industry? Bobby, I'll have you go ahead and kick us off.
Yeah, sounds good, Julie. Great question. Even before I answer that, I just want to acknowledge Mr. Stark. We've talked a long time about doing a webinar together.
Yeah.
And so it's just great to be able to be here, chat through a few things with you, a longtime friend in the industry. So thanks for being willing to do this. And Julie, thanks for being willing to corral the two of us, over the next, half hour that we have together. So I really appreciate it. So we're never the easiest, to corral. So I think, Julie, what I'm hearing a lot about from retail, customers, clients, partners, is just the increase in violence, aggression that they're seeing. So, no longer is it just about shoplifting, right? There's way more violence coming into this environment. We're seeing, unfortunately, stabbings, deaths. The aggression is on a whole nother level. And then that's impacting the customer experience, associate experience, from in-store to how those associates are feeling, how the customers are viewing the shopping experience. So I just hear more and more from retailers trying to take a new approach to address these escalating challenges. So,
James, anything else to add?
Yeah, thanks. And Bobby, of course, the feeling is mutual. Always good to hang out with you, my friend, and have a conversation about technology, and have the Loss Prevention Foundation and you, Julie, back us on this next half hour or so. But again, going to the question, I second everything Bobby said, but we're even seeing, retail AP and LP leaders are having to make decisions. It's no longer about whether the associate is, engaging or not engaging in the situation. It's about what are our agents doing in the field? How are they interacting? And forensic review is becoming more and more critical. And so now more than ever, details matter. And really it's that connected ecosystem that we're really here to talk today about, is how do we connect the dots between solution providers and make a holistic system for that forensic detail, that forensic review, to make actionable intelligence for our teams to move on. So that's kind of the things that I'm hearing.
And you bring up a really good point as far as the ecosystem is concerned. And so, Bobby, I got a question for you. Why is data linking so important, and what should retailers really be looking for in a solution provider when it comes to linking that data?
So we'll talk, obviously, throughout the rest of the time on, LPR and how that, how Aura works with a great camera like Axis, who can, run the LPR. But at the fundamentals, vehicles aren't the ones out there causing the crime. It's the people driving the vehicles. And so that's why people linking is so important, or, group linking. And I think, I look back at my career in retail and asset protection. Right now, like over the last 10 years, you spend hours, days, weeks, months, sometimes even more than a year trying to build a case. If you're an ORC investigator or you're on the APLP team, you're sifting through incident reports from stores, from your field teams, and you're trying to find these little breadcrumbs, right? Of, is this the same individual in this event and that event? And trying to build these cases, and you spend a ton of time focused on building the case. And that's why I think people linking is so important. If you have structured data, machine learning to help identify and accelerate your people linking, that's how, our retail partners in the US are able to identify the 10% of people that are responsible for 91% of their reported loss. So 10% of people, small number of people responsible for 91% of their reported loss. And they don't have to spend hours, days, months, weeks, years building that, and they can focus in on that small group. And again, it goes back to how I started my answer. If you know your most prolific offenders coming into your store and you know what vehicles they're using, vehicles don't cause the crimes. And so we'll talk about how we can link intelligence through LPR on those people that are causing the most amount of loss a little later on.
If we kind of back into LPR from there, James, why are retailers increasingly interested in LPR, and why does it make sense given the current state of crime? And Bobby was talking a little bit about that.
Right. So for me, Julie, it comes down to one word, and that's safety. We look at our customer experience, we look at our associate experience. We want people to come and shop in our stores. We want our associates to come work in our stores, and then we want them to go home the same way that they came to work, right? So it's how do we create that safe environment? Bobby referenced our previous days. I can remember, back in my days of chasing shoplifters, and you'd have a grab and run. And so you'd run up the stairs or run from your office, or if you were on the floor trying to converge on the door that they went out. And what was the one thing we were always squawking over the radios? Did you get the plate? Did you get the plate? Or someone screaming at the plate over the microphone, and over the mic, right? So you all are smiling and nodding because it's true. So with that one thread that we pull in that moment about the vehicle, as Bobby was talking about, unpacks everything we can do today with smart search capabilities, with how we can now build cases and share intelligent data across not just our network, but even start to cross-collaborate and communicate with law enforcement partners, with our other retail partners in our strip malls or wherever we're at, with ORC groups. I also think about the impact to our associates in our stores and the psychology of it all, and having parents call up, because they don't feel that it's safe for their child to work in that store because of things that are going on. Or you think about the part-time mom or grandma or grandpa or whomever it is that's working in the store after hours. They're not trained for that stuff. As LP investigators, we go through training modules and we go through recertifications and we make hundreds of stops. So we practice this stuff. These are things that these people are not exposed to. And I think from the psychological perspective, I think back to when I was at Pier 1 and our associates were complaining, just really upset because they were fed up with the fraud that was happening and how can they get these messages to us. So we did something as simple as put a fraud alert button on the POS, and if they felt it was a fraudulent transaction, they could just push it. And so you saw the psyche, and we celebrated those wins. And so as we roll out these systems and we do different things, we have to think about how do we celebrate the wins and reinstall confidence in our associate population. And these are just small steps that we can take, but have a huge impact.
I think like Julie just jumping in on like double, ditto for everything that James just said. And like in this industry, we're like seconds matter when it comes to safety. And traditionally LPAP's been pretty reactive. The way that James explained everything there, I saw something, then I saw, a mischievous behavior. I saw a theft happen, and then we do something about it. I think part of the reason why LPR is becoming so popular is it gives us seconds back and gives us that opportunity for an early warning. And potentially, every second matters and could save a life. And it also, for the LPAP professionals, it puts us into a more proactive approach, right? And so now channeling Dr. Reed, if I can get outside into that zone in the parking lot and have a better idea, 5 minutes of who might be coming into my store, that's 5 minutes that I never had before. And that's 5 minutes where I can make different decisions. I can keep people safe. I can hopefully prevent loss versus watching loss occur.
And I think that also kind of ties into being able to do more with less, right? We're consistently in this industry being asked to do more, identify more, and having some of these things automated, to your point, gives people the time back there. So most people on this call are probably very familiar with LPR and have a really generally good idea of how it works. But James, I'd like for you to give us a little bit more insight into this from your perspective on how LPR works.
Yeah, so Julie, I could get real technical right now and talk about distance and capturing license plates at 325 feet or optimize IR at 280. But the brass tacks of it is it comes down to seeing intelligence and our ability to process data at the edge. Because when you're looking at an image, you think like our brains think. Our eyes see the image, our brain interprets it. So that's what metadata does. It interprets that I have a blue sweater on, Bobby has a black shirt on, you have a light blue shirt on. And that feeds over, much like the same thing when a car enters a parking lot. It sees that it's a car. We can now identify that object as a car, a truck, a motorcycle, what it is. What color is it? And then we can also zero in on that plate. So we get that early detection that Bobby was talking about. But at the same time, your cameras become multi-purpose because now we're not just, single shotting for a license plate. I'm giving you a back shot of intelligent data of your parking lot to where you can do other things with open source technology and AI to where you can now track people through your parking lot. You can now pull that important data about how many, what were they wearing? What direction did they go? What area of the parking lot did they come in from? If they came in through an exit that's not being monitored, maybe they drove around the back of the store and out through a transportation route. You just never know in these moments. Shoot, they could have just driven through the grass on the medium. I've been there where that's happened, right? It's fight or flight, right? So I think it's the way that we can leverage your total system to collect scene intelligence to really start to mold and bring with or your story together from just a forensic collection of data.
So, Bobby, based on what James just said, can you talk about Aura LPR and give us your perspective and maybe how it works differently than some of the assumptions that we may have?
Yeah. So, Axis, and as James explained, the metadata that the Axis camera is collecting. So every single license plate that camera sees at a retail environment, from every camera at that retail location, all that metadata flows back to Aura. And we retain all of those license plate scans for 60 days. So it stays within Aura. It's all stored there. We actually get little, images of every time there's a plate and a vehicle seen by these cameras. That's traditional license plate recognition, right? You've got the data, what vehicles came in and out of your parking lot. Where Aura becomes different, and why I always like to say it's intelligence or intelligent LPR, is we talked about people linking at the start of this. And we talked about how, Aura customers were able to identify the 10% of people that were responsible for 91% of their loss. So we have this rich intelligence database inside of Aura that's showing the top people, who they're working with, what vehicles they've used. If there was a plate, that's all associated in their profile inside of Aura. And then inside of Aura with LPR, our retail partners can set a list of rules that creates the hot list, the vehicle of interest list. So they can set a list of rules and they can say, if a new event that's entered into Aura meets these rules, it's over $250 for an example. It involves a person that was violent, or it's been involved in multiple events. When we see a new event that meets those type of rules, we automatically enroll that license plate in a hot list, in the vehicle of interest list for the retailer. So that's a huge time savings for retailers. Traditional LPR, I'd have to go out, find that license plate. I'd then have to go to my LPR, provider software application, enter in that license plate into the hot list. So we automate a lot of that. Why does that matter? A great example is we've got a retailer that just turned on LPR in only 55 stores. And on day one, they enrolled 33,000 vehicles into their vehicle of interest list because they have all of that rich intelligence already in Aura. And we automate that hot list creation. And then from day one going forward, every new event gets added to that hot list if it meets those rules. So that's game changing for retailers. The last piece there with LPR is with Aura is we then will push the notification. So when the Axis camera sees that plate, it matches against the hot list, we'll push a notification through the Aura app. And what we push there is we push a picture of the vehicle as it just came into the parking lot, but we also provide the intelligence of the people that have used that vehicle before. So like I said at the start, vehicles don't cause crimes, people do. And so you get an instant alert with a picture of the vehicle and all of the profiles of the people that have used that vehicle before, with tags on if they've been violent before, if they've used a weapon before. So you want to talk about situational awareness. Now I know the vehicle, I know the people that have used it before, and I'm aware of who's about to walk into my store. And that's the difference between, I think, traditional LPR and this intelligent LPR that we've built through with Axis and Aura.
Yeah, and I'll follow up to what Bobby said there. I think there's a couple of things that I'd like to highlight, because we all know in those moments, adrenaline's flowing, right? Did we get the accurate data? What was said? What color was the car? I can't, different things, people react different ways, but it's the automation that Bobby spoke about, that when you get from because you may not write your report for, I don't know, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and you're coming down and you're making your notes. And then the other thing is the accuracy of the data that's coming in. So now you have that ability where technology is removing the human element of margin of error, and we're getting down to precise and accurate data. Again, details matter, but we're also automating a process, because as Bobby's already said, in these situations, we all know seconds or minutes, minutes or hours, right? So if we can position our teams appropriately ahead of time when that car hits, we're prepared.
And you are 100% correct, because every second brings value back to any solution that's out there. And that kind of goes into the next thing that I wanted to ask. So we obviously don't have to crunch specific numbers here, but every single solution out there demands a budget chat. So I'll start with Bobby here. How should LP leaders approach their LPR investments? What are things that they need to know to enter into conversations and be able to intelligently speak with other departments from a capital or an ops standpoint?
For me, it always goes back to ROI on any investment. Having sat in the retailer's shoes for a few years before Aura, it's all about that return on investment. And so some of the things to think through there is a capital expenditure versus an operational expenditure, where you're paying the same every single year. You can't bring that out over 5 years. There's not a lot of financial benefits in that. And that's where I think, the Axis Aura approach here really wins out in that space, because you're using cameras, from a trusted provider that's multi-purpose, as James has talked about. And then you're leveraging Aura, which can do more than just license plate recognition, right? It's looking at, crime intelligence. It can do investigations, can share with law enforcement. And so that all adds to that ROI calculation at the end. And then the last thing that I always say is, don't take my word for it. Don't take James's word for it. Kick the tires. Push your solution providers to give you an opportunity to pilot this thing for free. And sorry, James, I'm putting you on the spot, making us both do something for free, but push your SPs to give you the chance to kick those tires, just see what it is. And if they're not building you the ROI calculator out of that, they're doing something wrong, and they should be able to help you with all of that. And I think you just look at the solution at the end of that, and the ROI will speak for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know, James, I got to work with you previously when you were over at Pier 1. So based on kind of your experience in, let's call it the hot seat over there, how would you guide LP leaders from your perspective, both in previous roles and at Axis?
Yeah, so I would start, Julie, with the understanding internally for yourself of 9 times out of 10, innovation is misunderstood. Whether it's the technology or why we need it, it's met with resistance, right? So as Bobby mentioned, do your homework, understand the solutions, understand how they work to where you can speak to it in different use case formats within your organizations. I would say the other thing is socialize the idea. You can't have enough conversations before you go to capital, or you try to put a plan together or build out an ROI. Get some allies lined up for you. If it's privacy issues, if it's operational issues, if it's whatever it is, start talking to your attorney, start talking to your public relations folks, start talking to store operations or whomever may be in the room and help them understand A, the technology, and B, why you need it. And again, I think, you come down to that one word of safety, and that you're able to influence and impact this through technology. You start to pay attention. People start to pay attention. And I found a lot of success with that before I even got to numbers, is to tell the story. Tell the story of the technology and the impact it's had on the industry and the partners that you're bringing to the table and their reputations, and then lean into them for what they need, what you need to build your use cases. And usually things work themselves out. You get prioritized in those IT meetings. You get prioritized in capital meetings. And the other thing is, my old chief counselor used to tell me, and everybody, hey, don't waste a good crisis, right? Take advantage of the opportunities that you've seen throughout your organization and even throughout the industry to leverage those as part of your story.
And speaking of stories, and this is probably something that I know everybody loves to hear, real world, real life examples. So Bobby, have you had any interesting feedback from retailers that are currently using LPR, or even real world success stories that you could share?
I'll share a couple of them. And so the first one I'll share is just some success and some time savings around the vehicle of interest list and the automation that happens within Aura for that. So working with a retailer, a grocery retailer, they did a pilot with Aura and LPR for only 5 stores. But they had done another pilot with another LPR provider out there for 6 months before they started to pilot Aura. And in those 6 months, they only enrolled 25 vehicles of interest in their hot list with that other provider, because it required manual effort. They had to review these events. They had to find the vehicles. They had to have their SOC review that and then go and enroll it in that, other application. So 25 vehicles. On day 1 with Aura, after they set that rules and we enrolled all of their historic events and vehicles into that hot list, they had over 3,000 vehicles on that vehicle of interest list. And those 3,000 vehicles, there was 1,000 people associated with those vehicles, and those people were 4 times more likely to be violent. So it just shows you the automation that can happen. Plus, most of these individuals were violent, so now you're going to be aware. Another retailer, and it's kind of a sad story, but it's the reality that we're facing in the industry right now. They had an individual come into a store, approached a young female cashier, made some lewd comments. That event got added into Aura. They captured the license plate as part of that event, and that vehicle got automatically enrolled in the vehicle of interest list because that person made the lewd comments. That vehicle came back 30 plus times to that same store with the alerts. And every single time that retailer was able to know that vehicle came back, who was using that vehicle. And they had a plan in place, a safety plan in place for that individual cashier to make sure that nothing happened. So they prevented a safety event. They actually did a bunch of research. Turns out this person was on, the National Register for a sex offender, registration for a sex offender. And then they worked with local police to make sure that they were trespassed from all locations going forward because of that original event. So it just shows you, like, there's not a financial benefit there, but that's a huge safety benefit. That's a huge customer associate safety benefit that that retailer experienced just from that one event.
Those are some great examples. So I think this kind of circles back into legislation, and a lot of stuff is going on with ORC obviously at the moment, but specific to LPR, I know that the rules and regulations are unclear state to state, but is there any clarity that you can provide on the topic, and also any potential clear up any misconceptions about the use of LPR by retailers?
We've done a little bit of a review in the U.S. specifically, looking at all of the states and seeing what's legal and what isn't. There's only 3 states in the U.S. that LPR can't be used, and those are Arkansas, Maine, and New Hampshire. The rest of the states, the LPR can be used. There, a couple of them, there's some provisions and stuff in there that you've got to have a few controls around how retailers are using it. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's, it's 47 states and the District of Columbia. It is legal today to start using LPR for retailers. So it's a pretty standardized, almost commodity technology out there that's been out in the market for a while now.
And I'm just going to tie this in because I saw it come in our Q&A section, just since it's like absolutely relevant in this specific kind of topic right here. It's in order to prevent retail thefts, the license plate needs to be stored in a database. You had said for 60 days. So what are the legal implications of data collection for a big box owner or a retailer?
Yeah. So the reason why we look at 60 days is if you look at just some of the privacy law out there, that seems to be the comfort level with retaining that data is around 60 days. The other piece that you just have to make sure you have in place is that audit and trackability. So we've got that built into Aura. So from a home office, from a legal perspective, you can look at who's searched for what plate, who's received what notifications. So it's really important to have that trackability built in. And that's another way that, you just get that kind of that stamp of approval through privacy. And then I think James talked about it earlier, the fact that retailers are setting a vehicle of interest list at the home office reduces the risk or the opportunity for people to use this technology for bad, right? And do negative things. Like, they don't know why a vehicle gets enrolled in the hot list. They can't enroll their ex-girlfriend or friend or someone like that in the hot list. That all helps with your privacy lawyer conversation to get this technology approved.
And I think I've got another one just kind of from an aside. It's definitely done your homework as far as each specific state is concerned on which ones you can and can't have it in. But is there a bank, let's call it, what each specific state requirements are that either Aura or Axis has that they could share with retailers?
Yeah, Julie, we'd be happy to share out. We did a white paper on this, and so we actually break down each and every state and what the requirements are in each and every state, and then break down for those states that it's not legal, the reasons behind that. So I think we'd be more than happy if they reach out to myself or anyone from the Aura team. We can definitely share that PDF out with them. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to hit up James for a second. Bobby, I'm sure you'll have some stuff to add at this one, but what's the setup like? I mean, obviously you got to have cameras and then you got to have the solution to be able to kind of, let's call it, crunch the data. But what does it look like starting with the camera piece of it, and then we'll flow into the software piece of it?
Yeah, so we have a selection of cameras that it comes native to the camera, and then it's just a connection with Aura. And Bobby can talk more about how that connector happens with us. With Axis in our partner program, we're open source. So as long as you can get an API and we can talk back and forth and we select what data comes through that metadata stream, that's really how it does. We also have other cameras where we can layer in a licensed software onto it to enable that camera. And I'm happy to have conversations with anyone about that, and with our teams, they'll be happy to talk to you. So if you have an Axis rep out there, please give them a call and they can guide you through that. But yeah, it's really, Julie, for me, with all of this, it's about the visual data and how do we empower our teams and how do we leverage the technology to power the tools that Aura have. So that's where Axis sits in that, is we're the visual enabler, right? So
something you said, just kind of, I want to clarify too. It sounds like not all cameras, and that's just something I'm not even aware of. Do you have to have specific types of cameras? Is there like out of 10, there's only 6 that will fit the bill?
Yeah, so we do have a select few cameras within our assortment. You got to understand the technology. When you start talking about optimized IR and being able to read a license plate at 325 feet, that's not every camera. Now you can capture, say you have a PTZ camera and you're watching the incident happen and you can visually get it, but then you're going to have to manually put it in. So those are dynamic kind of scenes. We have static scenes that we're capturing that data and capturing that plate. Those models are trained, much like any other AI model, it's trained to look for that image.
So could retailers already have cameras that are currently existing that would work with?
Very possible, but it would depend on location. Again, it's all about strategy, right? So are they at the right places to capture the right data? Is there a choke point that we're focused on? In a lot of cases, you want to focus on those high traffic areas. So it's all about that strategy. But yeah, they could certainly have our camera models already in play on the edge or on the exterior of their buildings, and they just need to have that conversation with us.
And I just want to clarify for some folks what choke point means, just in case not everybody's aware of it. I'm pretty positive.
It's about what Julie's going to do to Bobby and I if we don't shut up.
I keep you guys going. But no, if you can clarify that for everyone out there.
Yeah, so it's the common place where you have a cross section. Think of an intersection, right? The cross point at an intersection is where you're going to get the highest amount of traffic. For example, the front of the store. There's a higher probability that car in a grab and run situation or whatever, somebody's going to be sitting in an area of interest in front of the store. So you want to make sure you're covering those areas pretty well, right? To catch information from all angles. So, front of the store, high traffic, areas of interest from a parking lot perspective. And for the most part, the end customer, whomever is there at that local store, they're going to know for the most part which entrances and exits are used, where they need to set the camera placement. This is where you need to be talking. If you're in corporate, you need to be talking to your local site, okay, and actually put eyes on and kind of help develop that strategy.
And I'm assuming it's just based on store size, how many cameras they potentially would need or want to fit the bill.
Yeah, and we use so at Axis, we have a site designer tool on our website. It's a robust tool. You can select the camera models. We give you how many pixels on target are you trying to identify? Are you trying to just recognize? What are you trying to accomplish? The heights, various different things. So it's a design tool that's free to our end customers. You can load in an image of your store from the web, what have you, and just build out from there. And,
Okay.
and actually set your requirements. What are your requirements? We'll tell you what cameras apply, and then you can go from there.
Very, very cool. I appreciate you kind of diving into that a little bit more. So that's all the camera side. So there's definitely that piece of it that has to exist for the software side to have data to work with. Bobby, can you kind of talk a little bit more about that from a what is the software side piece of it?
I won't go into that much detail because it's actually really easy. So James, walking through how and where to place the cameras, they're all going to be connected on the network for that retailer. So all of that metadata passes through the retailer's network and then goes up into our cloud. And in most cases, since the retailer's already using, might be already using Aura, already using the Axis camera, that's all like usually approved through security approvals already. But that metadata flows right up to our Azure cloud. We're a web-based application, so it's pretty simple, pretty lightweight, as long as that camera is sending us the data, and then we'll do all of the other magic on our side, push all of the alerts, everything through the Aura app.
And I think, Julie, if I can comment, that's an important part of what Bobby just said. It's light. So when you're flowing metadata, it's not a full video stream piping through, right, Bobby? It's not like the Mack truck going through there. It's thin data. So, when someone gets into the comments of IT, bandwidth this, bandwidth that, they look, let's talk about metadata versus the actual video.
So I think you kind of hit this a tiny bit, Bobby, but everybody always likes to also understand what the level of effort is, not only for the vendor that they're working with or their solution provider that they're working with, but also for their internal teams. What's the level of effort? I mean, aside from cameras, but from like getting this up and working, what's that level of effort look like?
At Aura, we've got an entire customer success team and implementations team that help the retailer. We actually own most of the deployment for the retailer. Co-collaborate on any sort of training that needs to happen for their users. But I mean, if we're looking at, just not even looking at just LPR, so deploying Aura to a retailer, we deployed a few years back to one of the world's largest retailers. They have about 5,000 stores. We deployed to all 18,000 of their associates in less than 6 weeks. And so it's very lightweight that way. And that's because we're a cloud application. It's really simple, really easy to use. It doesn't require a bunch of training, and it doesn't require a PhD in loss prevention or systems administration to use it. And so if we can deploy that number in that short amount of time, I hope that shows just how easy it is to deploy. And then LPR is just a small, fraction of that type of deployment. Yeah.
So it sounds like a lightweight from an IT perspective. Those are always the hardest resources to get. I think all of them.
From an IT perspective, I'm not putting a box anywhere. I'm not, doing anything like that. It is as lightweight as, can you please safe list these URLs for access to Aura?
Yeah, and for us, Julie, it's doing the homework ahead of time from a configuration perspective, right? How do we configure the camera to capture the data that the retailer wants to pipe through to Bobby at Aurora?
So what are some of the financial benefits of using this solution versus other LPR options? And obviously we've got some automation pieces of it, but there's got to be, you said it earlier, ROI. What are some of the financial benefits? Now I'll go with Bobby on that one.
I think if you look at the financial benefits, you're buying a camera from James that can do a lot more, that is going to be able to do a lot more, as he talked about. And that's also a capital expenditure, right? So now I can, take the cost of that over 5 years versus some other solutions out there. You're leasing the camera and the solution, and it only does license plate recognition. And so just if you look at just those financial numbers, that's where this approach usually comes out, 15, 20x less expensive than that, or, over the total cost of ownership. So there's that piece. There's the payroll savings piece of not having to manage your own VOI list, manage all of that. That's a huge, huge win. And then there's the associate safety benefits that all feed into that ROI. When you're getting an alert with the vehicle and who's used that vehicle before, you get stronger outcomes in the ROI because you're addressing, again, vehicles don't cause the problems. You're addressing the person, and you have that intelligence at your fingertips to address that.
Good luck to everyone. Thank you so much for attending today. It's been absolutely awesome learning more about LPR and speaking with both of you, James and Bobby.
Thanks again.
Thanks all. Thank you for listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by Aura. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast app.